Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to tell you about the amount of money it's going to take if you want to get a PhD in US. And of course, most of you know that if you are applying for a PhD program in the US, you will typically get some kind of scholarship, some kind of funding. Most people get a TA or an RA, so these essentially let them do some teaching or research activities in the universities, and through this they are essentially subsidized. And what happens is that these particular assistantships which are out there for PhD students, they also pay for the tuition fee. So what happens is that the PhD students typically do not have to pay any tuition fee. Now I'm going to list out the different costs here. I'm going to list out 4 different costs, and then I'm going to total them to tell you the amount of money you need to come to the US to do a PhD, even if you have gotten assistantship or scholarship. So this is something which is very important because many students want to come to US to do PhD from around the world because of the great name of various US universities. If you see the various QS ranking, you will see the most of the top rankings are from the US universities. So that's a pull factor which is there. Now, I actually applied to 5 universities in the US a long time ago. And at that time, I was able to get 3 scholarships, and in 2 places I got admission, but I could not join. So these 2 places where I could not join but got admission were Caltech and MIT, and the places where I was able to get scholarship were University of Maryland College Park, University of Rochester, and University of Minnesota. And so I ended up joining the University of Maryland at College Park, where I was able to get the MS and PhD. So let us look at these 4 categories which you have to pay for. Now the number 1 category is actually tests, and most universities do require that you give the GRE if you are applying for any kind of graduate study, and if you are a foreign student they will also like you to give the TOEFL or the IELTS. Now let us look at the cost of these different examinations. As far as the GRE is concerned, it is $270, TOEFL is $205, and the IELTS is also about $205. So I had given the GRE and the TOEFL combination. This is still the most popular combination among most international students. And so GRE plus TOEFL is going to cost you about $475. So do remember that this is the GRE general test. It is something which is very important because how you do in the quantitative and verbal section is actually a good barometer about how you are going to do in graduate school. I have actually made some videos where I talk about the fact that this combination of quantitative and verbal skills which is required by US graduate schools is one of the reasons why US graduate schools are so good, because here what happens is that the science, technology, engineering and math students, they know good English, and the people who are even studying social sciences, arts, liberal arts, humanities and so on, they have to know some basic level of mathematics. So this is something which is unique about the US education system. So these were the 2 key exams, GRE and TOEFL, and so you of course have to prepare for these exams also. I would say that you can consult the official guide here in both the cases, and I also looked at the Barron's guide in both these exams. So Barron's guide for GRE was actually quite good. It had a huge number of words out there, and of course if you like words then you are going to like GRE. I'm going to put some videos on the end screen about GRE preparation so you can take a look at that. Now, the point number 2 has to do with application fees, and application fees have been going up across the years. When I had applied, application fees used to be about $30 to $50, but now application fees range from $75 to $150. So we will take $100 as a kind of mean application fees. And if you are applying to 5 universities, which I recommend, then your application fee total is going to be $500. Now, the way to select these 5 universities is to select maybe 2 dream universities and 3 normal universities where you are likely to get. So in this case, what may happen is that you may get one of your dream universities or you may get a normal university. Now do remember, if you apply to more universities like 10 universities which many people recommend, then you have to pay extra money to send your GRE scores and so on. So GRE actually gives you 5 free universities, and that's something you can take advantage of. Now, the next thing we have to look for is the visa. So let us assume that you applied to these universities, you paid the application fee, you have got good grades in your bachelor's and master's degree. Maybe if you have not got good grades, you have made the case that you are still good in research. Look at my video about how low GPA may actually not impact your admission too much, but you can actually compensate by getting good GRE scores, by writing papers in journals and conferences and so on, especially if you are applying for PhD admission. So I have seen in many cases students even getting scholarships without giving GRE. So that was also possible, at least during the pandemic time, but it may have changed now. Now, let us look at the visa fee. So the F1 visa fee is about $185 and the SEVIS fee is $350. So you have to pay a total of $535 to the US embassy or consulate to get your visa. Now, of course, even if you get 4 or 5 scholarships, you have to finally apply to only one university. So you are going to get an I-20 from this university and then you can apply for this university. Do remember that if you get more than one scholarship, always send out a letter or an email informing the university that you are not going to join, because that's going to help them give that particular scholarship or financial aid to somebody else. This is a matter of professional behavior. Now let's look at number 4, which is travel. So let's assume that you have got your scholarship, you have got your visa, you are all set for travel. So it's going to take you about $1,000 to buy a one-way ticket to the US if you are coming from some typical international destination. Now, if you are coming from Europe, it may take you less. If you are coming from Mexico, it may be very less. But if you are coming from some far off places, then it's going to take you more. So I will put $1,000 as a kind of representative number here. Do make sure that you book a one-way ticket. You don't want to book a return ticket at this point, because you do not want to be sure about when you are going to go back. So that's something to keep in mind. That will of course depend on your PhD advisor, and PhD advisors typically do not like their students to go back until they are quite well settled into the research curriculum and they have become part of the PhD system. Now, I would also recommend that you take some cash with you. So when I had come, I had brought about $200 for myself, but now I would say about $1,000 is a good amount you can bring with yourself. Actually, you are permitted to take quite a lot of money. I think it's up to $10,000, but that typically is brought by some businessmen and so on. Of course, you can load this money into some kind of a debit card. So many banks give out a preloaded card in many situations. So these are known as Forex cards, and you can take advantage of that. Also, if you have an international credit card, it's going to help to pay for some of the basic expenses when you land in the US. For example, you will need to get a phone connection and so on. So that's something which is often very important. Now, of course, you can pack your suitcase with many things. I have made a video on what are the kind of things you can bring to the US. But do keep in mind that most of the things in US are actually cheaper than they may be in your own country. So what you could do is you can bring some things which are very important, maybe the current clothes you have. And also, if you think that you need some medication, you can bring some important medication which you need for yourself. So these are some things to keep in mind. Finally, of course, if you are even planning to buy a laptop or an iPad or a phone, it may be a better idea to buy all these things in US, because what happens is that US is a very competitive country. There are a plethora of shops out here where you can buy these things, and you will often get these at a lower cost than in your home country. So let us now total all these numbers. So for the test, it was about $475. For the application fee to the university, it was about $500. For visa and service fee, about $535. And for travel, about $2,000. That was $1,000 for the ticket and $1,000 cash which you are carrying with yourself, beside of course your suitcase and regular stuff. So the total amount comes to about $3,510. So let us round this off to about $4,000, because you may need a little bit more money in case you want to take care of how you get your passport, how you go to the place where you are going to get the visa. So very often people do not actually live in the city where the consulate is there. So they may have to go there by train or by plane. They may have to stay there in some place, and then they will have to get the visa there. So that's something which adds some of the cost. Similarly, people spend some time, money to prepare for GRE and TOEFL. That is something which may be well spent, particularly if you are somebody who is getting very low scores. It may be then worthwhile to join some coaching center which actually coaches you for GRE and TOEFL. So there are many online resources, of course, in YouTube which are free of cost. And also you may be able to buy some books and read them. So all these things are there. Now, if we look at the visa also, beside the application fee and all I mentioned, there are some extra expenses such as getting your pictures taken, landing up at the consulate and going back, staying at the night and so on. Because sometime what may happen, there may be one day for biometrics and the next day you may actually have the interview. Now the F1 visa interview is very important. Do remember that up to 30% of the students actually get rejected in these kind of interview situations. I have made a video on that. So do prepare for this particular interview. That's going to be something which is going to help you, because you don't want to go through all the process of giving these exams such as GRE and TOEFL, filing for the various application forms, applying and so on, sending off emails to professors, and then finally not getting the visa. So I will say about $4,000 is something you should keep with yourself. So maybe you can ask your parents for that. Maybe you can take a small loan if you don't have any money, or maybe you can think about saving this money from some part-time activity, or maybe you may work for a year and then apply. So I actually had some students who were from relatively poor backgrounds, and so what they did is that they worked for a couple of years after their bachelor's or master's degree, and then they applied for the PhD program. This is actually often very useful because the experience also comes in very handy when you later apply for any job in the US, if that is something which you want to do that. They are always going to give credit to your prior works experience, and believe me, some time spent in the industry also helps people become more mature and more diligent, more precautious, and so on. So I'll put a number of videos on the end screen which you can look at and continue your journey about this PhD abroad plan of yours.